I'm just amazed that so many people are here today. Thank you. I really thought because of the weather, because of the hassle of getting in here, et cetera, that there would be probably nobody here. Anyway, courageous people, thank you. I just want to thank Terry from the fairgrounds because we thought we were going to be able to get in and out before this all happened. And she thought we were going to have brown bag lunch at the Clinton Engine building, which we really can't. And so she set up golf carts at the very last minute for us and sounds like did a really good job. So if you see her, thank her. Because she's got a lot on her shoulders right now, and that was just an extra hitch in the get along that she didn't need. So I appreciate her doing that for us. Okay, Dixie got cards ready. Since I forgot to bring them last time, we've got 4 birthday cards going around for everybody please to sign. One for our president, Jack Willey, one for Linda Wood, Elaine Edwards, and Sarah Jones, who was our secretary for a long time. And she does all of our YouTube videoing and everything. So Sarah still, though she's not our secretary anymore, she's not on the board anymore, still does a lot of work for the Historical Society, which we really appreciate. And then there's a sympathy card going around for Dee Eberhardt's mother, Corinne Miller, who passed away. And Dee, as you know, is the person who keeps the Clinton Engine building looking nice for us, and so we really appreciate her. I just have some brown bag lunches to announce that I know who's doing some for a change. It's not a surprise. Okay, so next week is a really important, August 4th, really important brown bag lunch. There's a team coming to talk to everybody here. It's kind of a public presentation of the Historical Society's idea of what we would do with the acreage, the rest of the Clinton Engine site, where the prairie is now, where we have our prairie. Hopefully our environmental problems are going to be coming to an end soon. As soon as our environmental problems come to an end, the city is going to put that property up for sale. It would be bad for us if maybe the wrong people bought that, because we have our depot right there and everything, and it would really impact our last narrow gauge railroad depot in Iowa and all the work and the money that's gone into that. So we have a lot at stake at what happens to that property. We probably can't afford to buy the property from the city because property costs a lot of money these days, but we would like to maybe have that property for a lot of reasons, most of all for our depot. And so there's been a team of people that have come together to come up with ideas for us to present to the City Council as what the Historical Society would do with that property if they were to decide to give that property to us. Okay? So it's a wonderful presentation. You'll be amazed at the things that are planned for that property. So I hope that you will come. The fair will be gone. I hope that you will come. You'll bring friends. The board has already seen the presentation. It's pretty awesome. And you'll be amazed at some of the plans for over there that we may propose to do with that property. But they want as many people to see the plan and talk to your councilman, et cetera, as possible. So that'll be next brown bag lunch, August 4th. On August 12th, I believe, Gunnar is going to do brown bag lunch, and he's going to talk about the research that he's done on the Spanish-American War, on the war itself, on the battle that we're talking about back in our new exhibit that I hope everybody will go back and take a look at because it's pretty special. About the people from Jackson County that actually fought in the Spanish-American War, and a little bit about our volunteers at the Historical Society who did such a wonderful job of restoring that cannon. And this is the people who did it, maybe the most credit goes to Phil Gent and Dick Kunow on the board, who really headed up that project. They got people from welders from Miles and people from all over to donate labor and work on that cannon. They even took the wheels to southern Iowa to an Amish man to remake the wooden wheels on the cannon. So much time and effort has gone into it. Gunnar is uses a lot of IA and does some pretty remarkable things. And he said, Grandma, I don't really mean to hurt your feelings, but your slides are pretty boring. So, so you can see his and what his ideas, but that's going to be a really good program. Then on the next Tuesday, which would be August 18, Les Goddard is going to give a brown bag lunch. He's not done that for us before, but he said he would like to. He's going to be talking about, where's Lori? He's going to be talking about barns and maybe the upcoming barn tour. And in their magazine, they're talking about cupolas. Did you see that article? And why there were cupolas on corn cribs and everything else, right? So he's going to have a really interesting talk. So that'll be August 18th, and then August 25th, Tuesday, August 25th, the last Tuesday in August, Michelle Turner's going to be back. You know, she gives awesome programs. She's going to be doing our August 250th program. She's going to be talking about quilts, historical quilts from the past and everything, and she has a great program about that. Okay, I want to remind everybody that at 6 o'clock tonight, the Jackson County Fair Parade starts, and it's going to be awesome. Hope everybody goes to see it. And watch for our fair, for the Historical Society float. We have an awesome float that's going to talk about Muster on the Maquoketa, the upcoming Civil War reenactment. So watch for our float in the parade wherever you happen to be. And I hope everybody supports our fair. You know, if we don't support our fair, we don't want to have one. Just like if we don't support our radio station and we don't support our local newspapers, one of these days we're not going to have them, and then we're going to, and our movie theater, right? And then we're going to wonder, what happened to all those things? Where did they go? Well, maybe we didn't use them as much as we should have. Okay, so today we're just going to do something just fun and easy. And we're going to talk about summer in the good old days, the way it used to be. And a lot of us, I think, will remember that. So we have bits and pieces of nothing in depth, but bits and pieces of things that happened. But just seems like a good carefree thing to do when we're busy getting ready for the fair and everything else. And we're going to reminisce. So as we go along, if it reminds you of something, if you remember things that you did when you were a kid, let's talk about those a little bit. So first of all, we have, oops, I have trouble with this thing. First of all, we have our old fairgrounds. And some of us remember it. The Jackson County Fair has been an institution since 1854. We've had fairs here since the very first one in 1854. That's the same year that the Jackson Sentinel came to Jackson County. The Swigerts came and started our first newspaper, so that goes back a very long way. The first, and this is not the first one, because we don't have pictures of the first one, but the first fair was put on by what was called the Jackson County Agricultural Society. And to tell you how far back that is, the president and secretary were J. Goodloe, who was the founder of Maquoketa, and Jonas Clark, who was an early merchant. And the first fairs, even though the county seat was not in Jackson County at that time, it was in Bellevue, it's because we had people willing to go ahead and do that, like J. Goodloe, and so the first fairs were here. The first fair was a 2-day event. It was in October 25th and 26th, and it was held on a 20-acre plot where the depot was located, the old depot on East Platte, and normally I would say right down on the corner, but normally we'd be in the Clinton Engine building. So you know where the old depot was on East Platte Street? That's where the first fair, there was 20 acres there, and that's where the first fair was held. And again, we don't have pictures of it, I wish we did. So if you skip ahead then to 1867, that fair was awesome. It was very well attended, and the reason was that there was a circus in town at the time. So there was a lot of reasons for people to come. And as they look back at the dates, it showed that between 3,000 and 4,000 people each day came to that fair, and they paid a whole quarter admission. So things have changed, right? There were some great exhibitions that were there. Eagle Woolen Mill, that we talk about a lot had their products there. Barnes and Trindle, that were ironworks, they had exhibits. There were just a lot of things that they called hot commodities. But it's really sad because tragedy also marked those festivities with all of those people. One thing that happened was an advertising sulky and a buggy, because everything was horse and buggy, remember? The sulky and the buggy collided, and that injured a woman. And then that frightened another team of horses that ran into the crowd, and another woman was killed when that happened. And then outside the fairgrounds, there was another runaway team that injured an older man. And so what was a wonderful fair just kind of ended in a lot of tragedy. Those things happen sometimes when you've got lots of horses. I'm not in the right place, I'm sorry. Lots of things involved. So the fair was a wonderful thing to do in the summer for families who could get there. You know, transportation was hard. It's not what it is now. It was hard to get your family together and get to places, but the fair once a year was things that, you know, that people really look forward to. So this is the Jackson County Fair that was across the highway, where the old golf course was, if you remember. That's where that fairgrounds was. So we're going to talk a little bit about Tom Smith. Tom and Kate Smith, and we've had many brown bag lunches about them in the past. But Tom Smith grew up in Dubuque, and he and his brothers practiced acrobatic tricks all the time. And they went down to the sawmills, the many sawmills that were in Dubuque back in the day, and they practiced over big heaps of sawdust. So when they fell, they had something soft. They didn't have safety nets, but they had something soft to land on. And so the Smith Brothers acrobatic show was born there. And like I say, these are pictures of them performing at our fair. And you can kind of see what that looked like. So later, Tom Smith married Kate Becker. And it was the Becker Brick family. That's where Clinton Engine is now. That's where the Becker Brick Company was. But they married. She was also a performer. They traveled. They joined a circus. They traveled with a circus, and then they always came to Maquoketa for the winters when the circuses took their break. So they spent time in Maquoketa every winter. And then when they retired, they came back to Maquoketa, and they were in the area where our Clinton Engine building is now. They brought what was left of their circus animals. You hear people talk about riding the circus ponies that they brought back because they were getting older, and so their animals retired with them, I guess. So Tom Smith was famous, actually, for his dog and pony show, and I know that's an expression that we use now, that's, you know, but back in the day there were dog and pony shows. One newspaper stated that Tom and Kate Smith, with their high-jumping Russian wolfhounds, ponies, monkeys, and 50 dogs, offered a very pleasing novelty number. So, my pictures are out of order or something. I'm going to bring this on Gunnar. He helped me. Okay, so there you see Tom Smith with one of his Russian hounds. Look at how big that dog is. And he brought everything that he had left, he brought with him. We're really fortunate because they lived here and we have artifacts. He took his dog and pony show actually around the world. They performed for royalty in London, England, in the United Kingdom. They traveled all over. It was a very famous show. And we feel fortunate, and I brought them up here today so you would see them. But this cart over here actually belonged to them. He used that in his dog and pony show. And the dogs would climb the ladder and use that as a jumping off place. So we have quite a few artifacts that actually belonged to that dog and pony show, and there are many more pictures, but we've looked at them before, so I only put a couple up here. But there's Kate Smith, and there are their dogs. Going the wrong way. All right, this is more of their dogs. Can you imagine 50 trained dogs in a show? But if you look carefully at this picture over here, and it's hard to see, the two dogs that you see there are actually walking a tightrope. Can you see the wires under their feet? It's hard to see the wires. It's not the bar. There's two wires. And those dogs had been trained to walk this tightrope. And then when they met it, they all, when they met, the big dog went over the top, the little dog went underneath. They stayed on those wires, and they were just really amazing. So that's Tom Smith with a couple of his dogs. But from all reports and everything we've read, it was just a phenomenal show. And those were Maquoketa people, so that's just really special. But that's one thing, the circuses, the fairs, that people had to do during the summer when there wasn't TV and there weren't all the things that we have now to do. Okay, so then we lost the fairgrounds that we had across Platt Street, on the other side of Platt Street, and they built a new fairgrounds. And so you can see there as they purchased the land from Mr. Ports, handed him the check. They bought, and I think you can read that, they bought 37 acres of land where we are right now. Okay, that's the fairgrounds that we have right now. And I find this really amazing. It was in May of 1950 that they bought it in December, right? So May of 1950, work began on the new fairgrounds. Almost all of the work and the equipment was donated. Corn stalks were shredded, fences were removed, and the land was leveled. Bulldozers were donated by Don Schwenker, the Schwenker family. Babe and Bud Schaefer, some of you remember them. They had bulldozers, and Homer Bowman. And those people donated all of their time and their machinery to work this 37 acres of farmland and trees and shrubs and whatnot to turn it into the fairgrounds that we have. Riesling Brothers Oil Company donated all the fuel for those machines. I'm sure it took a lot. Rasmussen Motor Company cut all the corn stalks. Bowman Cattle Company, everybody remembers the Bowman Cattle Company. They donated trucks to haul away the trash. Northwest Bell Telephone Company in the city of Maquoketa, Iowa Electric, trimmed all of the trees. Carl Opperman, Glenn Eaton, Edward Keeney, Bud Schaefer, Chuck Hensley, they were all horse people. They laid out the racetrack that's right out here. And Les Davis was on hand with a large number of 4-H boys and FFA boys. They all helped. So this was May of 1950. If you can imagine, by August of 1950, the 6th to the 8th, they had the first fair. And it was quite something. There was an amazing amount of work done by amazing volunteers to make this happen. Not sure those things happen today. Maybe at Onward, maybe it did, right? But hard to get things like that done today. But back in the day, that was the way it was. The other thing that people looked forward to doing in the summertime was going to a circus. That's when the circus trains were coming. And this is not Maquoketa. I think it's Dubuque. But this is what the Ringling Brothers Circus train looked like. When it came to town, it was quite a sight. I hear a lot of people have come in and told us stories about, and maybe you were among them, when they were kids and they would go up to the hill where the trains came in from Delmer, and they would sit on the hill and they'd watch the circus trains come in. Did anybody here do that? I was trying to think of some of the people who told me about that. They would sit on the hill and they'd watch the circus trains. Circus train was so long that they had to bring it in 2 and sometimes 3 sections. They would bring it in and they would unload the elephants first, and the elephants would help unload everything else, and they would end up having their big fair parade, and the elephants would all march down through town. There's a wonderful story that's in our Jackson County Historical Society files. It does not have a source. It must have come from a newspaper, but it doesn't have a source. But I just want to read it to you to give you an idea of what the circuses were like back then. And we really don't have circuses anymore, right? The circus was a great American institution in 1890. Across the land, communities waited for months in eager anticipation of the day the circus train would pull into town. And Maquoketa was no exception, as it prepared for the biggest and most famous of them all, the Barnum and Bailey Circus, the undisputed at the time greatest show on earth. It was doubtful that anybody in the county failed to hear about the upcoming event, because the circus itself sent a train ahead of about 5 advertising cars and 126 advanced agents who well understood the power of advertising. They came through the little towns and they spread the news that the circus was coming and when the circus was coming. And so they had huge crowds. And then finally the day arrived when the Barnum and Bailey came to town. When it came to Maquoketa, it took 4 trains with a total of 64 cars to transport the crew and the cast of 300 circus performers. That doesn't even count the 400 horses, the 2 herds of elephants. I don't know how many elephants in a herd, but we have some pictures of the parades, and there were a long line of elephants. 2 droves of camels, 7 dens of wild beasts. I guess that's the lions and the tigers, right? And then this article said, and one assumes a partridge in a pear tree. The 1890 show boasted daily expenses. This is what it cost them back then for one day. $7,300 for one day. And remember, they sold tickets for 25 cents. And a capital investment of $3,500,000. The show housed 10 acres of tents, including one that was 550 feet long with 3 rings, the 3-ring circus. Whoops, the 3-ring circus, right? They had 20 clowns and 80 different circus acts. Maquoketans were able to view all of this for a total admission price of 50 cents. It was the first fair that was 25 cents. All right, 50 cents for adults to get into the circus and 25 cents for children. And of course, all free was the wonderful circus parade that everybody waited hours for it to come down Main Street and to the fairgrounds. And then when the elephants and everything got down here, then the elephants had to set up all the tents and, and do all the work. But I just thought that was amazing information. So Ringling Brothers certainly was here. So we talked a little bit at one brown bag lunch, at least about the Ringling Brothers, because they're Iowans, right? There were 7 Ringling Brothers in this family, and they grew up honing their craft in their backyard. They did tumbling, rope walking, and juggling, and they were from McGregor, Iowa, and they lived there in 1860. Their father was a harness maker by trade, and he had repaired the harness of a traveling circus performer one day in an emergency situation and didn't charge him anything. And in return, the performer gave his boys, free passes to the circus in McGregor. And they went there, they saw the professional performances, and they caught the fever, so to speak. They actually began staging shows in their backyard, and they trained and they got really good, and their backyard would be full of people when they performed, and from there their fame grew. And then this Iowa family moved to Baraboo, Wisconsin, where all of the circus things were, and they moved there in 1874. And then the 5 brothers that you see here are the ones that actually stayed with the circus concept, and they took their first commercial circus on the road in 1880. So I just think that's something Iowans can be proud of, even though they moved to Baraboo, right? But in all the time that we've been, looking at Jackson County history, I'm just really amazed at how many circus performers there were from Jackson County. And we've talked about a lot of them, but there were a lot more that we haven't even talked about. And we've had long programs in the past about some of them. So today I'm only going to mention a couple from Andrew. Whoops, sorry, I didn't show the circus parade. So this is downtown Maquoketa, East Platte Street, as you can see. Just part of a long, long circus train. But this is Baby Alice. Baby Alice performed with the circus. She was from Andrew. Her name was Alice Miller. Her professional name was Baby Alice, and she was billed by the circus as the world's jolliest and largest fat girl. Her weight was said to have been 647 pounds, and we don't really know a lot about Alice. We know she was born in Andrew, she lived in Andrew. Her parents were Charles and Clara Miller, and they were living, and then they moved to Baldwin, and they were still living in Baldwin in 1926, when at the age of 18, she married Lyman Eads. He was 26, and he was a Baldwin salesman. And that happy event took place in the Maquoketa at the Reformed Church in Maquoketa, and Reverend Boomersheim, that we hear a lot about, was the minister. What we don't know is whether her circus career came before or after that. We kind of don't know the time frame. So if anybody has any information about Baby Alice, we sure would like to know about it. Just lately, we've learned a lot about another circus performer. Her name was Minnie Atson. And Minnie Atson was also from Baldwin. She has a few relatives here that you would know. So right now, she's a relative of Jack Willie.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And
she even looks like Jack's one.
Is that right?
Yeah, one of them, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you, if you know any more about her that you could add, please?
All I know is she rode on the elephant in the braids and did that kind of stuff. That's about what I know.
Okay.
But she has the look. That face is, it's a Whittle look, not a Willie.
Okay. All right. And speaking of Whitles, we've been really fortunate to have a young lady named Kaya Whittle, who's been working at Clinton Engine. She's injured, and so her company pays her to work for a nonprofit. How long has she been there, Kathy? Dixie, do you think 6, 8 weeks?
Yeah.
She's been working for us, and she's been doing a lot of work on the Clinton Engine records, people who work there, et cetera, et cetera. And she's been very interested in that because her grandparents worked at Clinton Engine, and she's discovered some amazing things about Clinton Engine that we didn't know. And so it's been a lot of fun. Luckily, she's recovering, and we're not going to have her much longer. But as we were talking about circuses, she said, well, one of my relatives was in the circus, and so Minnie Atson was one of her relatives, and she helped us find a little more information than we had before, right? We know that her parents were Henry and Anna Atson of Maquoketa, and then they moved to Baldwin. We know that Minnie was, we know that Minnie was married to Charles Gooden, and that they lived in Baldwin, and that, well, we have a picture of her with her father. She was pictured with her father, who had a store in Baldwin. But there she is, in all her circus gear. So all of this, she was there with her father at his store and etc. Oops, sorry, I've got too many. There she is, sorry. There she is with her father in this store in Baldwin. This was in 1949, I believe. And so we think that her circus career was before 1928. We have a wonderful article about her that Kaya brought us from the Jackson Sentinel, and it announced her retirement for the circus she was with, and that she had a brand new contract with Robin Brothers Circus. And then there was another newspaper article that contract was ending, and she planned to leave at once to go to New York to join a vaudeville company. So ample proof that Minnie was multi-talented. And we found out that she had a winning part in an opera, Pinafore, and she appeared as Rosebud in another opera, and she was said to have a very pleasing contralto voice, and she had great volume to her voice. And while she was there, she was going to be taking voice lessons and that sort of thing. So she just had many, many talents. So I'm going to go, there she is, and there's one of the articles. There, and I think that must be the Buck Owens show. Would you think, on the 10th? I don't know. But she performed a lot of places and did a lot of things. But let's just look at her pictures. Whoops, I'm going the wrong way again. But just pretty amazing. And there she is. Doesn't show up very well. I've got the wrong lights on again. There she is on her elephant, but she was always on an elephant. But still, she had real talent, real singing talent, and that sort of thing. So she was quite a wonderful young woman. Okay, the other thing that people did in the summer when the fair wasn't on and the circus wasn't in town, there were a lot of tent shows. Okay, and I'm sure you probably recognize this one, Sebula. Sebula has many things to be proud of. It's certainly beautiful, our only island city. It has many historic buildings, and it has a proud history. But one thing that it will always be remembered for are its tent shows. Most towns would be lucky to have one tent show. Sebula had two. And they kind of overlapped and they were kind of intertwined, but they were two separate ones and they were both very successful. And so tent shows back then were a combination of vaudeville, legitimate theater, and just a special kind of magic, and people loved to go to them. And then they were kind of the only entertainment available in rural areas before the television. So a lot of people went to tent shows. This is their big tent set up in Sebula. And this is Jack and Maud Brooks. They really are among the most famous entertainers that Jackson County had. We're very fortunate because Maud Brooks, Jack Brooks, passed away first, and then Maud performed for a couple years after that. And then when she retired, she gave all of her artifacts to the Jackson County Historical Society. We have trunks. I mean, we have a wonderful exhibit back there. We've had many programs about them, and so I hope you'll go back there and look. But some of the things that they gave to us, they gave us trunks full of scripts, dozens of scripts for every little part of every. They had 3-act plays that they performed. Some of them were comedies, some of them were very serious. They gave us many backdrops to some of their things. Back there are all kinds of magic show artifacts. You can see the glass wine bottles that they would juggle that are really not glass and they're hollow in the middle, but you can see them all back there because there were always performances between the acts of the show that they were showing. So a lot of neat things back there that we have. Jack Brooks was born in 1883 in St. Louis, so he wasn't really from here. He learned to play several different instruments, and he made his first professional appearance on an excursion boat traveling up and down the Mississippi. But Maud Tomlinson was born in Mount Carroll, Illinois, and in 1895, she and her mother moved to Sebula, and she graduated from Sebula High School, and we have some of her. She was very, very artistic. We have a lot of her school papers and things like that, her etching books from art class, just a lot of interesting things that she did. She went off to Chicago to study music and drama, and both she and Jack were accomplished actors in their own right when they met in 1905. Jack had come to Sebula as a performer, and Maud had joined the troupe he was with, and then a year later they were married in Decorah. So they were just really interesting, but she was so very good to the Historical Society. For the first 10 years, they played mostly in opera houses in Iowa, in Illinois, in Wisconsin, and you'll see a map down there with strings. They really performed all over the Midwest. But by 1921, movies had kind of taken over, and so opera houses started to close because people were going to movies. And so they had an immense tent constructed, as you saw in the last picture, to house their entertainment. And they traveled around with many trucks like this with their crews and their props, et cetera, to give these shows. The company held a preview performance of what their programs were going to be over the year in Sebula every spring to honor Sebula and let the Sebula people, Jackson County people, see what they were doing first. And And they did that every spring for 43 years that they were doing this. After that, they took their company, the stock company, on a 14-week summer circuit of smaller towns of the tri-state area and around. A lot of special performances at other places. And then they usually returned to Sebula by September 1st. And that was the end of their season. So they were so well known here. Jack and Maud are buried in Evergreen Cemetery near Sebula. And people have written books about them. So back in the day, we've had programs by the authors of those books. One of the people that knew them well and was very invested was Linda and Charles Lane. Charles's brother Bob Lane wrote a wonderful book about them, which we've had for sale. I don't know if we have any right now. Came and did a wonderful brown bag lunch, talked all about them, promised he'd come back, and I've been writing him, but he hasn't answered me. So Linda says he's still well, so I don't know. But anyway, there's another book back there called Sawdust something that another person wrote. But I remember when I first came here, and it doesn't happen as much anymore, but when I first came here, there was, for instance, a tour of professional clowns from a organization of clowns that met in Chicago, and that whole group of professional clowns came here to look at the Brooks Brothers exhibit and see the things that they used, because clowns performed with them, of course. We've had a lot of theatrical people that have come and gone through the display. One day I was out here working and we just sort of let them look at things back there, the tickets, and there's trunks, and there's costumes, and there's masks, and there's all kinds of wonderful things. And so they were looking through the trunk of tickets, and all of a sudden I heard all this hollering and whooping, and I thought, whoa, and I went back, and they had found a little black book. So I looked at the little black book, and it didn't mean anything to me, but they were reading through the people that they hired to perform with them, and they came to this name. I don't remember what the name is. They came to the name, and this person performed with them, and how much they had paid, very little. This person was now a great blues singer in the Chicago area. But they found things like that going through people who started at the bottom and worked their way up. A lot of them moved through the Brooks Stock Company. So it's just been an awesome exhibit for us to have. And it's nice to know that she left us everything that they had left. So that was really a good thing. But not everybody can go to those things, and not everybody can get there every day. When you're working on a farm and you have to make a living and feed your family, and you've got chores to do, and transportation was bad and roads were bad, couldn't always do those things. But a lot of people could go to the caves, and there are beautiful caves back in the day. We've got a lot of old pictures of the caves. You'd think that the caves never changed, but they do look a little different sometimes. So it was just a real treat for a family to go to the caves. And so I just put in a couple. There's a picnic at the caves in 1882. I don't know who these people are, but these are just old photographs that I put up that, there's not really a place for in most programs, but maybe today, just to look at a couple of them would be kind of fun. Does anybody have any stories they want to share about maybe going to the caves with their family for a picnic back in the day, or anything like that? Certainly a very special place. Another thing that people did when you didn't have money to spend and you couldn't get places, Maquoketa, Jackson County, was wonderful. We're wonderful because we have water. We have the Mississippi River, and we have the Maquoketa River, and we have all sorts of things. So for those of you who don't know, Gil Strohmeyer is Lori's and Holly's grandparent. They're both your grandparents, right? So that's probably near your farm,
Yes.
I'm assuming.
Yep.
Still have that boat? No? But,
It went out in flood.
But just, you know, and it's just wonderful, the things that people did to have a good time back then. Do we do that kind of thing today? Maybe not so much. Now we worry about things.
Do you know who the girls are in the picture?
We do. I can't think offhand, but I could name those. But I have that photo, I have both of them, but the one on the right, I have it entitled, Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
Yes.
And their bathing suits, you know,
A full
almost
body.
covered. And
Yeah.
then they also hold like tights on, too.
Oh, wow.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah, I said to Grandma, geez, did you have to be completely covered just to go down to the Macocata River?
I think a lot of times they were wool on top of it.
Yes,
Oh, my.
Wool, too, but-
and I meant to,
Heavy.
right, heavy. I meant to bring them up there, but in the sports case back there, we have a red wool swimming suit
Oh, wow.
and a swimming cap that they wore. So if you have time, just walk back and look in that case. But it's it's amazing.
Do you think one of them is your mom?
Grandparents.
Our grandmother Irene Strohmeyer, if you remember her, she's the bottom left of the three girls.
Oh, is she? Okay.
Yeah, without a bonnet on or
Right.
swimming cap on. And
Right.
those were her two girlfriends. And of course, the river is just down from our farm. But that's exactly what they did with Maze with some friends in the hot summer days. Just go down, hop
That's
in
right.
the river and
It
cool
looks
off.
like she's
and
looking
walk.
for it.
And oftentimes it flooded, so that picture of Grandma and Grandpa up there in the top left could have been during the flood, and it would just cover the complete bottom of our farm. But that's how they had to get around, because the road was also covered
Oh,
with
wow.
water. So they would go in and out to Springville on that road.
So we have lots and lots of pictures like this. Lots and lots of pictures of people having fun in the Macocata River. But I think we need to say too that the Macocata River could be a very treacherous place. And lots, as you're reading the history, lots and lots of people having fun in the Macocata River. Lots and lots of children have drowned in the Macocata River. Just in my little Gibson family, 2 young boys, not at the same time even. We lost two young boys. And there's lots and lots of stories like that that are sad too. But most people had a great time, and it was wonderful, and that's one thing they did. Okay, who remembers Twin Springs? Does anybody remember, live over that way? Okay,
Well, I remember Mary Snowcutt, she was Mary Yoakum.
okay.
And her mother lived in Twin Springs and had a bar at one time, and I don't know a whole lot, but
Okay, so what I think, but I don't remember, what I think I read was the road went between, there were 2 ponds, is that right? And the road went between them, but people would go there in the summertime to just swim, and they were hot springs at one time. The water was really warm, so people went there for medicinal purposes, and it was quite a tourist attraction for a long time, Twin Springs. And then some of you remember Frank from Davenport, Frank Juarez, who's joins the Historical Society, and he's really interested in history, but he does a lot of metal detecting. So he got permission and went metal detecting around where the ponds were, and he brought us back some lights that he had just, like Christmas light kind of things that they had used for decorations when they were having a big party there or something like that. So he found just a couple things while he was doing that. But
so now her brother has built a lovely home. He was I'm gonna say he was a Special Forces Green Beret type.
Okay.
And built a lovely home there where his mother used to own it.
oh, that's so neat. Well, Twin Springs was quite a place back in the day, and back in our early history, and lots of people did go there, I understand. Okay, so another place that people played in the river all the time was Canton. So this is 1915, and you can see the water coming over the Canton Dam. That supposedly is the grist mill. For For those of you who don't know, never knew or don't remember, Canton back in the day was larger than Chicago. It had a grist mill, a woolen mill, a lumber mill, some other kind of mill. It had all kinds of mills. This is just, and the foundations and everything were still there. This is just one that still remained in 1915. It was a huge industrial place. People from all over came there to work in the mills. And yeah, so people swim in the water at Canton too. I don't know if any of you went out when we had, remember a few years ago, we had what was supposed to have been the 100-year flood. And Canton was, of course, badly flooded, and the Historical Society has some responsibility for the old Canton school there, the old Canton church, and so we had to go over and check on that because it was really flooded and the floor was going like this and that sort of thing. But it was kind of creepy because when we drove across the bridge, and it's not an old bridge, but we drove across the bridge, water was lapping up on the bridge. The water was so high in that area. So Canton has always had floods and that kind of thing. So I don't know if anybody is very familiar with Canton, but you know, there was a couple people that came and told us that there was a history book written about Canton, and we tried to find that, and we now have that. But now I have to figure out who asked for that. So, but there's a wonderful, just a history, people's remembrance of Canton and things that happened there, and it's available to us now. Another thing that happened in the summertime, people fished, right? Families fished, Dixie fished, lots of people fished. But there's a couple guys with, I think they kind of exceeded their limit there. Catfish? Bullheads? What are those? I think there's some catfish. I definitely see some catfish. The catfish had to have been caught on Wells catfish bait, I'm sure of it. But fishing and camping was just a big thing, a big part of the summer. Again, everything centered around the water, it seems like, right? And then we know that we had two wonderful places that people could go to enjoy the water. This one is Klondike Dam, out by Bridgeport. The Nims family, this was mostly their property. They kind of owned both sides of the river. The Nimses built the excursion boats and that sort of thing, but people flocked there to the dam. There was a big picnic area. There was wonderful things to just do in the outdoors there, and so people who were fortunate enough would go to the Klondike. And that's one of the Forest Queen. That's probably the most famous boat that the Nimses built. They built steamboats on the banks of the Maquoketa River, steamboats that were commercially used for a while and would go up the Maquoketa River, cross the Mississippi, and then go down the Fever River. I don't know whether I have my ups or downs right. The Fever River to Galena, because back in the day that was the best trading place that we had. But they actually built small boats that crossed the Mississippi and went to Galena. And we have some pictures of some that would come back, and they have the kegs of nails and things like that on them that they would be bringing back. At one time, the Maquoketa River was declared unnavigable, and they built a bridge at Bridgeport across the river. Then they built these steamboats, but they couldn't get under the bridge, so they actually tore the bridge down. Again, they made the river a navigable river, and so these boats went back and forth, and they couldn't have a bridge until such time. They came as far up as where the North Fork and the South Fork converged. They came that far. They could get that far. So the Nimses built many of those small boats. But lots of fun times happened out there. And this, of course, is the chute-to-chute that was above the dam at Lakehurst. And we hear all the time about the chute-to-chute. It was Jack, I can't say his last name. Do you remember Ted? Jack who had the chute-to-chute. You would all know if I could say it. Okay, he built the Shoot to Shoot. People would go out there for the summer. During the summer, all summer long, they would have a wonderful time. I think the Shoot to Shoot ran on the weekends. There were excursion boats. There were all kinds of fun things to do. There were cabins up and down the river at that time. There was Black Hawk, places where scouts came with their scout camps. So droves of Boy Scouts would come for their summer camp out. Just all kinds of activity on the Maquoketa River above where the dam is. And so that was part of the, Jack Martin, that was his name. Part of the, Joe Martin's brother, Jack Martin, is that right? Okay, they, lots and lots of fun. So when Hearst put in the dam, Abe Hearst put in the dam, and of course it was named Lake Hearst after the Hearsts, so many tourists came to enjoy the Shoot to Shoot and all the recreational activities that were there on the weekends. Cars were just becoming available to people. So people would come in their Model Ts. Is that before the Model A? They would come in their old Ford cars, right? And they would be lined up all over. And there were so many people that they could bring enough gasoline to get here, but then they couldn't get back because there was no gasoline. So the Hearst had to build a filling station of sorts there so that they could furnish gas that people could buy for their old automobiles that they could get themselves back home after they had come here for this great water time. And then, many of you have swum in this swimming pool, I bet. So the Maquoketa Municipal Swimming Pool in 1940. Yeah, it looks little, doesn't it?
It does a little.
But it was a busy place. So I worked there. Everybody who was in high school worked there at one time. So it was a fun place, a busy place. I think the thing I remember most is when you came out of the dressing room. Of course, you had to take your shower, come out of the dressing room, and then you had to walk through. Do you remember? Had to walk through those big tin pans full of disinfectant. You had to walk through those to go out to the pool. I don't know. A lot of things happened at that swimming pool. Anybody have any stories about the Maquoketa swimming pool?
We used to have a bus that came over from Bellevue for swimming lessons over here.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of swimming lessons were given here, that's for sure. Barb?
There was a rope dividing the shallow end. A boy pulled me over in the deep end and let me go. He thought I could swim and I couldn't. And I can still remember, I never yelled when I come up. But there was this one guy was there and he looked and he thought I was in trouble, so he came over and he got me and pulled me out. Otherwise, I'd have probably drowned.
Oh my gosh.
That boy was very upset with himself because he did that.
Because he pulled you out? Oh no, because he took you over there to begin with. Oh wow.
Wow.
Okay, a lot of things happened there. Some of them, that's what happened. I remember when I worked there, it was a time when there were not many black people in Maquoketa, like none. And it would be a hot, sweltery summer day, and driving through Maquoketa to somewhere else, they would stop and want to swim. And it was my job at that time to say, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to use the swimming pool. And that was really a sad thing. But I did a good thing there, because I'm a plumber's daughter, right? Someone lost an expensive ring. They were washing their hands, expensive ring down the sink. So I went home and I got a wrench and I took the sink apart. And I got the ring out before it went on down and returned it. So I was just a valuable employee. I want you to know that. But yeah, that was a fun time in the old swimming pool. So, okay, so there were a lot of things that people had fun doing on the farm. Things that, you couldn't get to town. And so, I'm sorry we didn't change the lights. We have to remember to shut off the lights. Not that I'm blaming you, I should remember to shut off the lights. So the pictures are kind of dim, but if you can see, that is Star Engelhouse. I guess that was his name, right? And he's in an iron ring, and they took turns rolling down the hill in that iron. Now, I can't think that would be very much fun. But they just did a lot of things like that. The Henry Beeler Park. So that came from the Bellevue Library. But just kind of gives you. I remember. Phil Owen comes, and he lives in Cascade now, and he comes and does programs for us now and then. And they lived out at Sand Prairie, out by the Sagers family, et cetera, et cetera. We were all very poor back then, right? But we didn't know it, maybe, I don't know. But one day, the Owens boys were all home on the farm alone, and their parents had gone somewhere. And I hope you remember him telling this story. They were bored and they didn't know what to do. And they had several tractors on the farm because their dad always bought old used tractors and fixed them up and cobbled them together, and that's what they farmed with. So each boy jumped on a tractor and they decided to have a parade, a tractor parade, and they decided to go to the caves. And they came in from the one side, coming down the steep hill, and Phil Owen figured out that his tractor didn't have any brakes. And he was coming down this hill, and it's hilarious to hear him tell the story of how he got it turned around and, so that could have been a tragedy. A lot of things could have been a tragedy, but anyway. So this is in the city of Maquoketa. Of course, on the corner of Main and Platte, where the Mexican restaurant is now, that's when it was the Jackson State Bank, and you can see the Decker House down at the very end there. But Dirt Street, I think, still then. No, Brick Street. I can see the bricks. Brick Street, and even a manhole cover there in the middle. But those were the motorcycles of the day. So there were motorcycle groups even way back then. So on a nice spring day, summer day, guys would get together and go riding on their motorcycle. And upstairs over the bank, you can see the sign that's where the Excelsior newspaper records were. The newspaper printing things were up there. And so just but those buildings are pretty much still there. They're just different businesses now than there were. So that was just kind of a fun thing that people did. Bicycles. And then how about this? This is Bellevue. And I don't know what house this is. I'd love to know. I don't know if it's still standing.
I think so.
You think so? So we need to find out the address of that house. But there he is. Can you see him in his hammock?
That house might be torn down.
Do you think so? Karen thought maybe it was there.
Huh?
I was thinking if it's to the west of the Presbyterian Church, that one's still standing there. You're thinking of the one that's
To the west of it?
So you can see the church in the background, right? See the steeple of the church? Yeah. So I don't know if it's still there or not, but it looks like an awesome house and quite the fancy hammock to hang out in, right?
Yeah,
kind of looks like he has a suit on though. That doesn't seem too comfortable.
You think of the church across from the Market High School, the house from across from Market High School?
Oh, that's St. Joe's.
That one's down.
Yeah, that's St. Joe's.
You don't think that's the Presbyterian church? We might have made a mistake. First one ever, but we might have.
I assume that it is correct.
I think it is.
That it is.
I'm gonna have to drive around there.
Will you guys check that out and we want it to be correct. All we know is what people tell us when they bring these things in. Okay, so then my last one is, this is just Kelly Overbreckling when she was 20 years old. And she was riding the Clinton Engine ATB, the all-terrain bike.
No shoes on.
No shoes, there she went. But there were a lot of things that were done in the summer having to do with Clinton Engine. They tested things. They went out to the dam and they tested the engines on the boats. That would be a nice job. Actually, Clinton Engine had some buildings, kind of small warehousey kind of buildings out on the river, and guys would go out and test the boat motors and things like that. She's obviously testing an ATV, but just lots of fun. Does anybody have any more stories to share about what they did in the summertime to just have a good time back in the day?
You didn't mention Horseshoe Pond. Come on.
It's on the,
It was in the show.
In the
good.
front picture, yeah, but you didn't say anything.
Well, I don't know very much about it, except I could.
It was the first picture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was the introduction.
Okay, it's,
Yeah.
I have a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
Okay, how different does it look now than, I haven't been back there for a while. Does it look pretty much the same?
Well, it's changed quite a lot.
I don't think so. No. Is that the trestle back there?
That's Horseshoe Pond.
Is that by the interpreter center?
No, it's
No.
across from city limits, that's what I'm trying, it's across from city limits. And so you drive back in and Horseshoe Pond, and so when I was a kid, a long time ago, that's where everybody went to ice skate in the wintertime. But I had weak ankles, so I didn't do so well, but I
They've
tried.
been sledding there too. And where the campgrounds is now is nothing. I mean, that was all.
Just a field?
Yeah.
Okay, and you know, that's where Bullocks is, where they have their big grain mills and everything like that. But they're putting new playground equipment in there, and a lot of campers there from time to time.
The
So.
Citadel's out there too, right?
Yes, and that's a good point. So the Citadel is out there, that was the old Salvation Army Church. It was the first Citadel west of the Mississippi, built west of the Mississippi. The Salvation Army Church had a great place in Maquoketa. They had a large congregation. They did wonderful things. They stood on the corner with their bands, and they just had a great presence here. Yeah, but it's the first one. It was located right behind where the post office is on James Street. And that is actually where the first Marie Elsner owned it at the end. J. Goodeno's sister Mary was the one that had the land, that gave the land for the church, for the Citadel to be there. Then down the road toward the end, after it was closed, Marie Elsner owned it. That is where our collection at the Jackson County Historical Society, that was the first place that we had to put anything, because this building wasn't built yet. So some of the artifacts that are here probably started out over there. It was our storage area until we had a home. And thanks to Allison Pearson, we have a home. So anyway, if there's, please, Colleen.
My memory is not necessarily a memory I did, but every summer it seemed like it was time for the fair when Dude Reichman would paint on the windows of the gas station. He did like the whitewash of the Ferris wheel and like, whenever we always was time for the fair and he had whitewash pictures and his artwork was around, you know, Dude 66 of like. It always felt like it was time for the fair. When you saw his artwork, you know, kind of primitive, but it was, you know.
Did he do it himself?
Yeah, they still
Whoa.
remember.
He had the Ferris wheel on there and a couple other things, and those on his big front window. Yeah.
Why don't I remember that? I'm
I
right here forever.
Yeah, fair time or whatever, and he'd have things painted around.
Painted around it.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Dixie?
Also, I think there's a circus in Wyoming, Iowa, coming up pretty soon.
Okay,
I think I saw that on Facebook.
probably.
Yeah.
They usually bring us tickets to hand out, and we put them out in the front, free tickets and things like that. It's just sad that because they can't have elephants anymore, and because they can't do many of the things that they did in the past, you know. But Jean went to Florida, right?
I did not.
Oh. Okay, all right. I have to
We
remember.
were the ones who did.
You went to Florida, to this to where all the circus stuff is in Sarasota, okay. So if you remember, Marcella Henneke, and it was before I came back, so it was a long time ago, Marcella Henneke here brought in a miniature circus, and it took days to set up, and it took this whole area. And Ted Mays at the lumber company loaned sheets of plywood to set up, and sawhorses and things, to set up this miniature circus. And it was wonderful. And it became very famous. And we are thinking that, I mean, the man's name was Bill Clamorous. I think it's Klammerus or something. And he came and with our help set everything up. It was extremely detailed. It was fantastic. And he lived, I think, in Cedar Rapids, and he got it out. The family got it out every 4th of July for people to come and see something. And so we were wondering if it was in Sarasota. You know, if they had taken this huge collection. And so someone went to one of our members, went to Sarasota and was looking for us. And there were things there that they thought could have been it if they maybe had divided it up. So we're still trying to find out where maybe that went. But it was really something. I saw pictures only.
We could ask Jake Kahn, he goes down there and he
Oh.
works, I think he directs a band, the circus band.
The circus band, I didn't know
Anyway, he's
that.
involved with it, and he does that every year, I think.
Maybe he would find out for us.
Yeah.
All right, and then we had a miniature circus made out of matchsticks at one time, I'm told. But anyway, circus days were wonderful. Anyway, thank you so much for coming, for suffering through everything to even get in here. It was very nice. So thank you.